Good afternoon, Facebook and social media followers. This is Haiti Oropesa with Florida You Judge, and good afternoon. Shortly, we are going to have a couple of guests who are going to be discussing the candidacy of one of the candidates who seeks to be the next chair of the Florida Democratic Party, Manny Diaz. We are going to have, who is right now in the waiting room, Patrick Mantiega. He is the editor and publisher of a very, very respected and followed trilingual publication, the only one in the United States, La Gaceta. Um, Next year they're going to celebrate their 100th anniversary of its publication. He's going to be with us shortly to discuss the candidacy of Manny Diaz to be chair of the next chair of the Florida Democratic Party. And also with us, also waiting in the waiting room, is Al Fox. Al Fox is an individual who has been a very loyal Democrat for over 55 years. He has had a very distinguished career in Washington, D.C., a 41-year career working in and around the Congress of the United States. And in 2006, he moved back to his hometown of Tampa to run for the United States Congress. He ran against current incumbent Kathy Castor. Unfortunately, he did not prevail in his bid to be serving the Congress. And the central issue during that campaign was the engagement with Cuba. So the issue that was in during that campaign was how should engagement be, and now not how someone wants it to be. He's been the principal leader in educating Tampa's community to have a more progressive attitude toward U.S. and Cuba policy, and he's waiting to also weigh in on the candidacy of Manny Diaz. And so, without further ado, I am going to and hold on a second. I'm getting some feedback. Let me go ahead and take this off. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
Are you listening? Do you hear some feedback or echo?
Not on my side.
Okay, so let me see what's going on. And we're also gonna let me go ahead and add Al. Hi, Al. How are you?
Hi, Al. How are you?
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey.
I don't know why I'm getting some feedback, but in any event, okay. So, Patrick, let me start with you. Maybe it's because I have Facebook on. I'm getting echo from my end. Can you hear me now?
Now we hear the echo.
Okay. All right. Very well. Then it's hopefully my echo will go away soon. Let's start with you, Patrick. I read your column in La Gaceta, the December 18th edition last year, where you went into Manny Diaz's candidacy, and you made several points about why you don't think he's going to be a good fit for that position.
Well, I'm worried about loyalty. You know, I want the chair of the Democratic Party to think of the Democratic Party first, to work on trying to make sure we have a Democratic governor. And sometimes when people take these jobs, they have other agendas. Manny Diaz has been part of the Cuban exile community for a long time. He helped. He was one of the lawyers for the family down there during the Elian Gonzalez saga. And so the agenda of the Cuban exile community is generally an agenda that fits with the Republican Party, not the Democratic one. And so a little bit worried that that if he were to get this post, that he would use it to and try and influence the Biden administration to keep things tough on Cuba. And that's not necessarily going to be the solution to the Democratic Party's problem with Hispanics. There's some other things that exist. As mayor of Miami, he was kind of rough on unions. He never has actually been elected as a public official, as a Democrat. He's defeated Democrats running for office when he was an independent. And then recently he's given to some Republicans himself and through his firm. And so you just don't want to get somebody as Democratic chair who has another agenda. And I'm worried that he does have another agenda.
Okay, Al.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
wanna, and for those who are watching, just disclaimer: I'm not a Democrat. I was a lifelong Republican and recently switched to no party affiliation. So I just think that it's important. This is an important conversation for the state, even the state that we reside in, Florida. But Al, what points do you want to make about Manny Diaz being the next chair of the Democratic Party in the state?
Well, Haiti, of course, all the points that Patrick just made, but Patrick is sometimes can be very diplomatic. I just feel much stronger that in the state of Florida, we cannot find a loyal Democrat. And people said, well, what Manny did, it was in 2000. No, what Manny did was this last year, in 2020, he held a fundraiser for the mayor of Miami-Dade against the Democratic incumbent, Debbie Muscal Powell. In 2017, he held a fundraiser for Carlos Cabello, the Republican, against Joe Diaz. While he was mayor, a lot of his aides were indicted for corruption. And these are all facts. Arguably, many of us believe very strongly that Manny Diaz and his ilk lost Al Gore and the Democratic Party the presidency in 2000. In April of 2000, he renounced the Democratic Party over the Elian Gonzalez, publicly, repeatedly trashed Janet Reno, had advised the family in Miami to break U.S. laws. And I just can, for the love of me, I cannot understand how so many people have endorsed this man. And every time the Democratic Party loses an election or something, they huddle and they come out, oh, it's the Cuban American vote. We need to appeal more to them. I don't know when in the hell the Democratic Party is going to understand that the extremists in the Cuban American community are the damn problem. They are not the solution to anything. And I excuse my frustration, but Manny Diaz may be a great husband and a great grandfather and a great father. But that I don't know. What I do know is that he's a disloyal Democrat. Why in the hell would we turn to him to lead our party, the state of Florida?
And here's something else that I want to make the listeners aware of and the viewers, that I extended an invite to a prominent Tampa Bay politician, Senator Janet Cruz, and she's ignored the invite to come on and wait. And I believe she's endorsed Manny Diaz. So am I correct on that?
She has endorsed Manny Diaz. And I have to tell you this, I noticed the other day that the Hispanic caucus didn't endorse Manny Diaz. They endorsed the black candidate, Cynthia Chestnut. And so if you're trying to get him to solve the Hispanic problem and he can't even get the Democratic Hispanic caucus for the state of Florida to endorse him, that shows you that there's a little bit of a problem there. There's the Democrats often look for a simple solution. And so they think by hiring this guy, they're going to miraculously solve their problems with Puerto Rican, Mexicans, Colombians, and the like. But generally, the Cuban exile community is not a great place to bring these groups together. And so, he's very much unlikely to deal with that. The other reason why some of these leaders like him is because they think he's going to be a great fundraiser. But when you take a look at Georgia, it didn't matter who the head of the Georgia Democratic Party was. That was national money coming in because they had a competitive race. They had good candidates and they had a chance of winning.
So you're saying, Pat, that some of these endorsements are because it's more about money than principle.
Yeah, they're hoping that if he raises a lot of money, they don't have to raise money and it'll end up in their coffers. But that's, like I said, that nowadays the way the Democratic Party gets a lot of these things funded is through national small donors. And so it isn't the party chair going and holding a fundraiser and talking to people and getting that money. And you can also hire fundraisers. We've done that in Hillsborough County very successfully. the next chair of the Democratic Party doesn't have to be the fundraiser themselves, but they have to be able to put good people on board. And really, that's the problem with our Democratic Party is we keep hiring the same bad people to run the party, the same bad brain trust to be our consultants, and we end up with the same results no matter what we spend.
Haiti, there's another little factor here that so much of this is based on ignorance, that if Joe Biden had not won the presidency, Manny Diaz would not be seeking to be the chair of the Florida Democratic Party. Okay.
Why? Why?
These extremist Cubans, they're very good. We ought to copy their strategy. They are very, very good. They always want Democrat extremist Cuban Americans in positions of power and authority, and Republican Cuban Americans in position of authority. So if Donald Trump had won, okay, all the Marco Rubio types who are already in that administration had the president's ear. Now they turn to a Democrat because we have a Democratic president. Okay, it just boggles my mind that so many prominent named Democrats immediately jumped on the bandwagon. And I had one prominent Democrat who I very high on. He called me and he told me, he said, "Now Manny Diaz is okay on the issue of Cuba. He's going to take us towards Barack Obama." The problem is that those people don't know the kind of question to ask. When Manny Diaz publicly denounces Luis Posado Carrillo, an internationally convicted terrorist, I will pay attention to. But Luis Posado Carrillo is a hero to Manny Diaz, as is Orlando Barr. Okay, and that to me is just despicable.
I had a chance to talk with Mr. Diaz the other day on the phone, and I asked him, did he have any regrets about his involvement with the Elian Gonzalez issue? And he answered very quickly that his only regret was that the administration had the federal troops go in there and point a gun at him, and that they took the kid from the family, and that they reunited Elian with the father. And so, you know, there's probably only 3 or 4 people who believe that it was right to keep Elian Gonzalez here in this nation and not give him back to his father in Cuba. And obviously, Manny Diaz is one of them, and is unapologetic for the problems he caused the administration and losing the election for Gore in the state of Florida, which lost him the nation. And so, you know, when you talk to people and you get this sense, you get a sense that they really, that this is their number one agenda item. And I don't need the Democratic Party chair using the position to somehow repress Cuba and to keep the current Trump rules in place on the Cuban embargo.
If anyone watching wants to call in and weigh in, 813-221-9700. Alex Sink, I also extended an invite to her to come on today since she's endorsing Manny Diaz, I believe, also for the chair position. And also, more importantly, than having, I didn't hear from Alex Sink, by the way, back. I didn't even get a courtesy response, nor from Janet Cruz. But I also, more importantly, invited Manny Diaz, since this is a discussion that is very, it's partisan. You all are seriously criticizing him. So he has not responded whatsoever. I emailed him on Monday. Let me ask you this, Patrick. Do you think that Democrats here in the state are really give a rip about what happened with Elian and his involvement and his position that he wanted the boy at the time, Elian, who's now a grown-up man, he wanted him to stay? Do you think they care about that, or do you think that they might think that there's other issues in the state that the Democratic Party needs to focus on?
Well, to understand how the state of Florida keeps ending up in the Republican column in these national races, to understand a lot of the politics that go on here, is to understand the Cuba issue. The Republican Party has one minority that they do everything for, and that is the Cuban American community in Miami. And they have worked with that community to try and deliver them the state of Florida. which has continually close races. So they're just trying to get a few votes down there to be able to make this happen for them. And so, you know, when you take a look at the Al Gore race, the Cuba issue played into this. When you take a look at the last race that Hillary had, with Obama having a better relationship with Cuba, you saw Hillary do fairly well with the community down there. But Trump, who went to the far extreme on this and got really tough with Cuba, he made gains in Miami this time because of that. And because he was selling the socialism issue and things like that. So, you know, you really do have to have an understanding of the Cuba issue if you really want to understand Florida politics and what's happened. And when you start to look at the people who are going to be running for president down the road, or people who might be running for governor, you start talking about people like Marco Rubio. And his whole strength was built out of that community. He was raised by it. He got his political positions through it. And he still benefits from it, and he still serves that group more than he does anyone else.
What do you think the chair of the Democratic State Party, what do they need to bring to the table in order to be effective with the objectives that the party membership believes is the most important and pressing at this time politically in this state?
One of the main things that they need to do and should do is to go out and recruit young people at all levels, county commission, city races, Florida legislature. And does anyone believe that Manny Diaz is going to turn to a young 25-year-old Patrick Mantiega and recruit him for the Florida legislature the minute he finds out what Mantega's views are on U.S.-Cuba policy? Does anybody believe that? No, they don't. And just last year, and Haiti, your point is very well taken, that do Floridians really care about the Elian Gonzalez? When you isolate it, the answer to that is no, not really. You've got other things to worry about. But when you scratch the surface a little bit and see what an integral part that is, last year when Bernie Sanders made the comment that Cuba has a very good education system. I'm not talking about 2000. I'm talking about several months ago. Manny Diaz slammed socialist Bernie Sanders, who sides with the Democratic Party. And this is what he said. Castro's communism destroyed the Cuban society, and that destruction has spread throughout Latin America to Venezuela and Nicaragua. Does anybody believe that Cuba controls Venezuela and Nicaragua? It makes a great story. So these things they're so interrelated that it is vital that the next chair of the Democratic Party at least support President Obama's position on U.S.-Cuba policy.
Al, but listen, you are sounding like, and me and you are friends, okay? We do disagree at times. You are sounding like it's almost like it would be bad for him to exclude recruiting, winning over persons to the Democratic Party in the state and having them helping them to seek positions throughout the state. But it almost sounds like you would like the flip of that, having people that espouse your view on how to engage Cuba with U.S.-Cuba relations.
No, it's a good point. I see what you're saying, but I just have to disagree with it. I think that there are certain things that are a test for people. They're litmus tests, okay? And we've come a long way on this issue to what Barack Obama did, okay? Is Biden going to take us back to where Barack Obama ended in the first week of his presidency? No, he's not. And who's going to keep him from doing that? People like Manny Diaz advising. And so if we can find a great candidate that's only, and he's a great loyal Democrat on all the issues that are important to Democrats, except this one disagree with me, I say recruit them. I don't have a problem with that. I don't. But when that is the litmus test, okay, that if they're not have our views on Cuba, then they're not even going to go any further with anyone else.
But do you not see, and this is for both you and Pat, don't you see some Democrats, including Biden, are trying to kind of shy away from being labeled socialist and communist, and have even disavowed the current regime in Cuba?
Well, we were the South Florida Democrats have been hard on Venezuela and on Cuba, and that they lost their jobs while being hard on it. You can't get to the right of the Republicans on the issue of Cuba and Venezuela. So if you're going to be Republican light on these issues, you're never going to make the inroads in the Hispanic community that you need to. So long as the issue of Cuba remains.
You mean Democrat, Pat?
What?
You mean Democrat, not Republican. If you're going to be Republican, I think you meant Democrat.
Yes, I'm sorry. And so if the issue of Cuba remains, it plays right into the Republican playbook on how to keep pushing this socialism issue, how to keep those Cubans loyal to them. And so the best thing for the Democratic Party is to get this issue off the table. And you get this issue off the table by normalizing relations. But I'll even expand it further than that. You know, it appears that Manny Diaz is attracting the establishment support. And the real problem we have with the Democratic Party is not an issue. The real problem we have is we keep hiring the same bad people and they keep doing the same bad job. And the people who are making the money off the Democratic Party are supporting Manny Diaz because they want to keep their jobs. And so how do we keep hiring the same consultants who lost these congressional seats? How do we keep hiring the same consultants that lose our governor's races? How do we keep hiring the same consultants that lose our state rep races? And we do because they keep controlling who the chair is. We need to get some fresh blood in there. We need to get somebody who is not paid for and bought by the establishment, who's going to mix things up. We continue to do the same thing over and over again, and we continue to lose.
You know, one of the strongest points along with this one, in fact, if Al's correct, that he's making it a litmus test on who he supports, who or tries to recruit into the Democratic Party. The one that you made about his defection, where he became an independent and defeated a Democrat. And then in 2005 again running as an independent. It almost seems like he's a chameleon, depending on where the political winds are shifting. So unlike people like Al, who's been a loyal Democrat for over 55 years.
Right. And you know what happens if he's chair and Biden changes his policy towards Cuba and he decides to quit the party in the middle of a fundraising drive, of the middle of a campaign? You know, he's proven that if he gets mad at the Democratic Party, he'll leave it. He's proven nothing that he's loyal. And so, you know, I'd like a better litmus test on loyalty to the Democratic Party before I want to put somebody in charge of it.
Should Democrats be open to engaging or in discussions about bettering for changing relations with Cuba, which does not involve having to accept socialism?
Well, sure. I mean, you know, all we're doing is trying to have a normal relation with a country that's like many other countries in the world. You know, it's better than some. It might be worse than others. And so we have a unique policy with Cuba that we have with nobody else. We've never had this policy. We've never tried to punish a small country for such a long period of time. And this policy has created a lot of poison in this state with our Latin communities, with the Cubans, with the Venezuelans. And so the Republican Party uses these issues as a way of trying to sell themselves to these very specific communities. But it's not good for the state. It's not good for the Cuban people here, the Venezuelan people here. We should normalize this. We should have a system that allows the Cubans in Cuba to do better. And currently we're doing everything we can to make their life miserable.
Haiti, the Democratic Party does a horrible job in allowing the Republican Party to frame the debate. Okay, but the socialism and the socialism and the socialism. Americans are getting a check now from the federal government because they need it desperately because of the pandemic. You know what that's called? That's called socialism. Okay, they're getting their vaccine shot. You know what that's called? That's called socialism.
Right,
okay? Right. And so we do a horrible. I'm a capitalist. I believe capitalism is one of the great economic engines. But capitalism has an Achilles heel, and that is greed. Okay, and greed is not good. And we've allowed the Republican Party to frame the debate with Venezuela. Venezuelans that have come to Miami in the last few years took a page right out of 1959 of the rich Cubans. These are rich Venezuelans that are coming here. I don't ever recall anybody in Tampa, Florida, in the time I've been here, worrying about the poor Venezuelans. They don't have this, they don't have that. I don't remember any of that. When we controlled Venezuela oil, okay, we didn't care about the poor people in Venezuela.
You know, if we have free healthcare, supposedly we're going to end up like Cuba. Maybe if we have free healthcare, we end up like Norway or Sweden. You know, there's a lot of places that have socialist type governments and a lot more socialist programs that we are. Some of those are some of the countries that are rated the best to live in the world. You know, this is not a labeling that happened today. This has been happening since Roosevelt. You know, everything he did was labeled socialism. Social Security was socialism. The FDIC was socialism. You know, anything we did, the Republicans claimed it was socialism. The right said, oh, we're going down this horrible road. We're going to end up like some socialist country like Russia. And so anything that ever helped the people in this country has been labeled socialism at one time or another.
What about corporate socialism? Talk about corporate socialism.
Absolutely. Yes.
In the days of Roosevelt and Truman, they were smart enough to get around that argument. They were smart enough to frame it better. Today, we have to frame the issue that Cuba and Venezuela weren't made by free healthcare. They were made by dictators. And we had a president who obviously wants to be a dictator and just sent his troops in to try and storm Congress to stay a dictator. That's the thing we should be worried about. I shouldn't be worried about free healthcare.
Right. I agree. So, do you all want to leave the listeners, viewers, with any last thoughts? We've gone on for 30 minutes. I'd like to have you guys back to have the discussion about socialism. The bad word, the curse word, because I think it's a lack of education with some people in understanding some of the points that you just made, Pat.
Sure.
You know, it's an emotional response. That's a bad thing. No to that. And so they don't go any further in analyzing, critically thinking about some of the issues, and they just go with that, you know, the phrases that stir up emotions from a party in order to gain votes.
We have a leader, Haiti, we have a leader, the head of the Democratic Party here in Hillsborough County, and she's running for this position. And yet the newspaper here locally and all the Democratic leaders here locally are supporting Manny Diaz.
How does that happen? Like Janet Cruz. Janet Cruz said she'd already been committed to Manny before Ione said that she was going to run. Can she just change her mind and say, oh, or are you committed to somebody once you endorse? Could that not change?
But you asked to leave.
Change her mind before with Susan Valdez, so she can change her mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so then she's on board with Manny. It has nothing to do with her prior commitment, perhaps. Go, Al.
Right.
Well, I'll leave your viewers with this, that I believe in my heart that somewhere in the state of Florida, there is a talented, professional, loyal Democrat, okay, that could become our chairperson, okay, that would be a hell of a lot better than Manny Diaz that we can't trust.
And again, her name is?
Ione Townsend here locally.
Okay, so let's go ahead. And so when the vote's going to be taken on the 9th. Yes, how does that work, Pat? Because I'm totally, again, I've never been in the Democratic Party or a member. So how does that work?
It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Nobody absolutely knows. The Democratic Party has done such a horrible job with its elections that nobody really knows how it works. You've got some people who have a weighted vote, some people who don't have a weighted vote. You got a caucus gets a vote. You get an elected official gets a vote. Some don't get a vote. They have done a job so that very few people are qualified to be able to run for office, and very few people are able to vote on the person running for office. And the system has created a situation where you just can't go out and recruit the best Democrat out there, because you have to have, you know, a certain position you've had with the party to be able to be qualified. And so, you know, they're going to have this, I think, a Zoom type vote. They're going to, you know, count it. But in the past, there's been concerns about how they've counted the votes. You know, if if the Proud Boys are worried about an election that may be scandalous and might not be fair, the vote for Democratic chair is one to look at.
Let me ask you one last question. Give me some notables as to who's endorsed Ione, who you all seem to think would be an ideal fit for that job.
A lot of the local unions have endorsed Ione. I don't have the names, but I think the plumbers were one of them. I think the iron workers and things like that. So local labor seems to be with her. There's been some progressive organizations across the state that have endorsed her. I think she'll do very well in Central Florida. I think that Manny probably did better with most electeds and did pretty well in South Florida. Cynthia Chestnut, who is a candidate running out of Alachua, she's gained some support and endorsements around there. So, it might be a pretty, it might be a 3 or 4 way race. At first it looked like Manny Diaz might run away with this, but I think that enough people started talking about it, enough people got involved to where it might be a little closer.
Does the vote take place January 9th? There's no early voting. They all meet and how does that work?
Yeah, they all vote at one time. And
okay.
They used to meet in like Orlando, and they would have a little vote, and they'd do a ballot box thing, and then they'd have one set of votes, and they'd have another set of votes, and they'd have another set of votes until they worked it out. Like I said, they adjust the rules. It's a hard thing to figure out. It's like I said, that's like watching Donald Trump in the Electoral College. You really can't figure out what's going on.
I know last year you made some predictions. You make predictions. Your publication. Do you have a prediction?
No, because like I said, I just it's such an odd election. There's no data you can find. There's no. It's hard to call people. It just is really weird. It's not a normal way of voting for people.
Should that be a objective goal of the chair? Future chairs to change that?
I think it's the number one problem we have with the election of local chairs and the election of the state chair. I think the election itself creates problems in getting the cream to rise to the top.
Okay, so I'm going to give you both an opportunity to give any last thoughts words before I wrap up. Al.
Well, I think my position is pretty clear that I think I would support any loyal Democrat over Manny Diaz. And I think it's almost analogous to Charlie Crist was a lifelong Republican. And he wised up, and he's now a Democrat and doing a very good job, incidentally. What's the point? Does anyone believe that the Republican Party would call Charlie Crist up and say, hey, we would like you to be the chairman of the Florida Republican Party? Does anybody believe that can even happen?
Okay, so just as I was about to wrap up, we are now graced with the presence of my friend Grant Stern, who's a journalist, investigative journalist. He also is an activist and owns a mortgage company. Grant, hi, how are you? And what do you need to say or wish to say to the public about Manny Diaz's candidacy to be the next chair of your party's state party? And Grant Stern is primarily operates out of South Florida, mainly from South Florida. Hi, Grant.
Hi, Haiti. I'm sorry about my shortened appearance today. Obviously, national events are very disturbing and have been quite involved. But as a member of the Democratic Party in Miami-Dade County at large for 4 years, and as somebody who is an activist who actively lives in the city of Miami and has since the time that Manny Diaz became our mayor through now, I have a unique experience to share, and I'm going to share it in a small nutshell because we're short on time. I fought an illegal Walmart plan, which the behemoth retailer tried to impose into a very special district created by taxpayers in Midtown Miami, a major urban revitalization public-private partnership project, which I live about 7 blocks away from in the city of Miami. in the same neighborhood I've lived for quite a long time. So Mayor Diaz participated in creating this district back in 2004 and converting it from a brownfield into essentially Miami's future downtown area, into an area that is, just a linchpin, a hub to the east side of Miami's just complete and total change over the last 20 years, from a dangerous area where everybody had to leave to do what they needed to do, to an area that everybody wants to live in and walk in and work in at the same time. So Mayor Diaz represented Walmart in their efforts to shoehorn a very illegal project into Midtown Miami. And after an 8-year struggle, where he was only known to be involved for about 5 of those years, but after a lengthy struggle, my side prevailed, law prevailed, and we prevented this Walmart from being installed into Midtown Miami. And the reason why is that Manny Diaz was their lawyer. And there's only one thing that he was brought on to do, and I defeated that with the facts and the truth in courts of law, and ultimately in a court of public opinion, because we proved to the public bodies involved that we had the evidence that Walmart's plan was so illegal it was literally permitted to sit on their property. Let me explain. Mayor Diaz was counsel to Walmart, who got an extremely illegal approval from the city of Miami's planning director. We appealed to the commission. They lied every step of the way, of course. We went to a 3-judge panel of the 11th Circuit Court in Miami-Dade, sitting in its appellate capacity, reviewing our petition for certiorari. These are the most difficult things to win under the law, because administrative law merely says if there's some sort of competent substantial evidence that whatever the city decides is okay, and that literally means just somebody that says it's okay and it can't be egregiously bad, then they could do whatever they want. Cities have enormous power over making zoning decisions. But Manny Diaz, along with the city of Miami and its lawyers, but Diaz was lead counsel for Walmart, argued, and this is the judge's description of it: let's turn 5 into 3. They literally spent a year in court fighting me over a section of code that said they were allowed to have a total of 3 loading berths. And they actually went to court to argue that the word total under the law meant minimum. That's corruption. But it got worse. After we won the first round of court, my attorney did not do perhaps the best job. We lost the second round in court. And despite losing our second round in court, I still found new counsel to bring action in the 3rd District Court of Appeals for a second-tier certiorari appeal after being denied per curiam in the lower courts. And it was that action that actually led to expelling Walmart, because they exposed some of the evidence that the city had been hiding on their behalf. But moreover than that, it led to a 4th lawsuit. And that lawsuit exposed Manny Diaz's hand in these illegal permits on public land that Walmart didn't own. And the city issued these permits knowing that not only was it illegal to give a permit on land that somebody does not own, but it was specifically illegal to give the permit they gave Walmart on more than one piece of land.
Haiti, several.
Okay, so listen.
That is the rest I'm going to write into a story and publish very soon. I was actually planning on writing it yesterday, and the events in Washington, D.C. preempted that.
Okay, so Al, listen, I'm going to let you respond, but again, for those who are listening, I emailed Manny Diaz on Monday, advised that Grant Stern, Patrick Mantiega would be coming on to discuss his candidacy, and he has not responded whatsoever. So, but because I like due process and fairness, if he'd like to come on, I'd accommodate him today or before January 9th, the vote that's going to take place. so that he can respond to what you're saying, Grant. Al.
Haiti, I just wanted to add to what Grant, and Grant knows this, but I just want to emphasize it. That during Manny's tenure as mayor, several of his aides were forced out of office because of corruption. One stole $50,000, another one didn't pay their taxes. I mean, again, the frustration is why are we turning? Why are we, the Democratic Party, turning to someone like that?
Look, you know, his biography, very well known biography, is reason enough not to have him in office. He's the person that Republicans would like. He's behind the Marlins Park. He got Hank Adorno disbarred in the fire fee fiasco, which at the time cost me a small fortune as well. Like personally, I wound up getting a refund eventually through one of my companies way back when. But he enacted a legal tax and then conspired with an attorney to deprive all the people that had been taxed illegally of their refunds. That's Manny Diaz. That's Manny A. Diaz. That's his big accomplishments. Oh, and getting investigated by the SEC. I'll leave you guys with that. And Haiti, thank you so much for having me on your show. Okay.
Of course, always, Grant. Thank you so much. Have a great day, Grant. Okay, very well. So, wow. Any last words, Al? I'm gonna wrap up. We've gone on for 45 minutes. It's been good.
And I'm just very disappointed in our party if, in fact, we end up choosing someone of Manny Diaz's character.
So, what do you do if that happens after you're disappointed? What does the party do?
Well, I'm too old to quit, so I'll keep hanging in there.
All right. Thank you both for joining me. It was a great discussion, especially for Democratic Party members. And so, Haiti Oropesa with Florida You Judge. Till next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.